Hello and welcome to another edition of Proselytize or Apostatize. I'm your host, David Russell, and I'm here with my co-host, David Paulman. What's up, David?
How's it going, Russell? Great to be back with another debate.
I know it's been a while since we actually had a debate. Today we kind of started it off with Aaron, which was kind of cool, and now we are in a formal and slash informal debate style with the boys from Reasons to Doubt and our friends Travis and Tim. You want to get us introduced, David?
Yeah, absolutely. So most of the faces have been on here before, with the exception of Tim. But yeah, we'll give everyone an opportunity to introduce themselves. Travis, you've been on the show before, so tell us a little about yourself.
Yeah, I'm Travis. I've been a Christian for about 3 years. I grew up secular. I was an atheist, but really looking at the evidence and going over everything. I eventually became convinced that God exists and that Christianity is true. And tonight I'm going to be defending theistic naturalism and idealism.
Gotcha. All right. And then joining us for the first time and in his first debate, Tim Howard from Invoking Theism. Welcome on, Tim.
What's up, guys? Thanks for having me on. Really happy to be here. Excited. So just quick thing about me. I run the channel Invoking Theism. What you'll find there is my interest in metaphysics and defending God's existence. So apparently I'm a little quiet. I don't know how. I'll try to fix that after this. But so I just got done with my contingency argument series on there, and I'm working on some other things. An argument from evolution is going to be coming out at some point. Been doing a lot of reading on that. So yeah, that's just some quick things about me and what I'm doing.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. And yeah, Tim's channel is really good, so I do recommend people checking it out. He doesn't upload a lot, but what he does upload is good. And so, yeah, while he's working on his audio, we've got the boys from Reason to Doubt on. So welcome on, Jared. Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, my story is almost the opposite of Travis. I was born and raised a Christian. I say born or raised because I actually spent almost my entire life in the church. But after looking at the evidence, I realized I didn't have a good reason to believe in God, so I decided not to anymore. But like I said, we do Reason to Doubt. It's a podcast on skepticism, so we cover everything from Bigfoot to, Jesus stuff to QAnon, whatever it is. If you can be skeptical about it, we are. And tonight we're going to talk about naturalism.
Hey, have you guys done chemtrails yet?
Chemtrails? No, we haven't. We haven't tried those. There's like pixie sticks or something. Like you just take them up the nose.
Look into that one. That was pretty fun. Go ahead, Jordan. You're up, buddy.
Yeah, so I run Reason to Doubt with Jared. He sold himself short a little there. He has a master's in divinity, I think it is. That's an interesting story. You can hear it all on the podcast.
Theology. Yeah, I went to seminary.
Yeah, so check one of our first episodes for that whole story. But I'm a nuclear engineer, in no way qualified to engage in this conversation. But yeah, on the podcast we try to go all over. I think there's something for everybody there. We go everything from aliens to QAnon to Christianity. So check us out after this.
All right. And the topic for the debate today is whether theism or naturalism explains reality better. And the format for this debate is we're going to have two opening statements from our theists and then two opening statements from the naturalists. And then after that, they're just going to have some free discussion back and forth. And so without any further introductions, we're going to turn this over to you, Travis, whenever you're ready.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And I appreciate coming on. So first, I'm going to be presenting the argument from emergent spacetime and digital physics. So in the hunt to bridge quantum mechanics with general relativity, the holographic principle is widely regarded as an essential feature of a successful theory of everything. The holographic principle states that gravity in a three-dimensional volume can be described by quantum mechanics on a two-dimensional surface surrounding the volume. In particular, the three dimensions of the volume should emerge from the two dimensions of the surface. A collaboration of physicists and mathematicians from Caltech and the University of Tokyo have made significant steps toward unifying quantum mechanics with general relativity by explaining how space-time emerges from quantum entanglement. Now, in 2017, a UK, Canadian, and Italian study has provided what researchers believe is the first observational evidence that our universe could be a complex hologram. Theoretical physicists investigating irregularities in the cosmic microwave background have found that there is substantial evidence supporting a holographic explanation of the universe by studying these irregularities using the theory of cosmic inflation, showing that space-time could be emergent from information processing in an entangled state. Now, quantum cognition is an emerging field which applies the formula of quantum mechanics to model cognitive phenomena such as information processing, decision-making, memory, concepts, conceptual reasoning, and perception, along with quantum decision theory based on the math speak of Hilbert space, directly applied to quantum mechanics. So think of holding conflicting views until finally making a decision. This can be modeled in Hilbert space like the collapse of a wave of potential states. So given the data of quantum cognition and quantum decision theory, and that there's nothing in quantum states that distinguishes between mental and non-mental, and applied to emergent space-time, I would argue the following. Information processing in entangled states is the product of mind. The universe is emergent from information processing in an entangled state. Therefore, the universe is emergent from a mind, and this mind is who we call God. Then my second argument is going to be the argument from teleological precision. So once the universe goes classical around 10 to the minus 35 seconds, we see precision in cosmic inflation, the precision in the united force breaking into the four fundamental forces of gravity, electromagnetism, and the strong and weak forces. For example, the precision in the electromagnetic force is essential for the precise sharing of electrons with atoms, in addition to the ratio of the electron mass to the proton mass. This precision is required for molecules to even be able to bond together. The precision in the strong force is required for governing the degree to which protons and neutrons stick together in atomic nuclei, and to even have hydrogen in the universe. The precision in the weak force is required for life essential elements like carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, and phosphorus to exist in the just right ratios to support life. The precision in the gravitational force is required for determining how hot the nuclear furnace in the cores of stars will burn, and to produce the heavy elements essential for life, and is required for even the possibility of a life-sustaining planet. Then, interestingly, in the initial moments after the Big Bang, matter and antimatter were created in almost equivalent amounts. At 1 millisecond at a time, there was a release, I think it was like a 1 in a billion asymmetry. And had it not been for that one extra quark to every billion pair of quarks and antiquarks, the universe would have devolved into radiation and nothing would have ever come into existence. Yet again, showing precise input at the time of the Big Bang. Then we must have the precise ratio of protons to electrons, ratio of electromagnetic force constant to the gravitational force constant, precise entropy level, precise mass density, precise initial uniformity of cosmic radiation, precise gravitational interaction with the moon to support a stable rotation axis tilt, precise degree of plate tectonics, precise degree of volcanic activity, precise function of even something as insignificant as soil mineralization must be precise, or there is no possibility of advanced life. And even in biological evolution, like process structuralism, precise information is required in the laws of physics for the development of suitable body structures, showing that precise information was input at the time of the Big Bang, analogous to uploading information to run a program, showing a state of intentional outcome, from which I would argue. Intentional states are the product of mind. The teleological precision exhibits an intentional state or desired outcome. Therefore, the teleological precision is the product of a mind, and this mind is who we call God. And so with that, I'll go ahead and throw it over to Tim.
Okay, how do I sound? I had to go with my laptop mic. I wish I could use my better one, but this is the only one that...
No, it's fine. Your audio is good.
All right, cool. All right, when do I start?
Whenever you start talking.
Okay, cool. All right, so I won't waste any time, and I'll just jump right into it.
I'll be presenting what I think to be an important foundational framework when it comes to theory choice and in conjunction to arguments in favor of theism. When we are evaluating theories, we ought to consult a theoretical framework, for this will give us the proper tools for assessing the liability of these theories to internal defeat and to make an assessment of the comparative theoretical virtues of these theories, paying attention to simplicity, unification, explanatory power, and predictive accuracy, and the like. This will be the criteria in which I'll be weighing the two theories against. Now that we have the general framework outlined, I can proceed. There are a set of facts of reality that both the theist and naturalist are required to explain. I'll be arguing that theism predicts these facts and offers the simplest explanation of them: matter, physics and fine-tuning, minds, principles of morality, principles of reason. I'll begin with the perfect foundation argument. Premise 1. Reality in total is self-sufficient with no outside cause or explanation. Premise 2. Nothing can be self-sufficient without a perfect foundation. Conclusion, therefore reality has a perfect foundation. The steps of this argument are simple, but it's all we need for it to be effective. For premise 1, reason simply reveals that nothing exists beyond the totality of everything. I think that my atheist interlocutors can agree with me on that. If so, then there does exist something uncaused. This implies that there exists something that is itself necessary and has an independent nature. We can conclude this by probing the reality in which we occupy. We are surrounded by things that are dependent on other things for their existence. For example, I am dependent upon my parents for my own existence. These are what we call contingent things, facts that could fail to obtain. To avoid certain explanatory problems, I am only speaking about the facts concerning the existence of things. When we widen our scope, I think it's quite apparent that physical reality is itself contingent. Macro-level objects are dependent upon microphysical objects that compose them. These fundamental microphysical objects are themselves dependent upon their internal structure in which they are united, and so on it goes. We face a construction error when we try to arrive at independence from dependence. No matter how many dependent things you add up, you will only get more dependent things. This is because dependent things are uniformly alike. Sorry, I lost myself. Are uniformly alike. Even if you have a past eternally existing infinite regress, by way of uniformity, it doesn't exempt that past eternally existing set of dependent things from having a further non-circular explanation. We can then conclude that the dependent things cannot construct the self-sufficient totality, but this self-sufficient totality is the foundation of the dependent things. Why must this foundation be perfect? The foundation must be perfect because an imperfect foundation generates two problems for the naturalist. 1, arbitrary limits, and 2, construction. The first problem is internal to the foundation itself. Arbitrary limits only add unnecessary complexity to the foundation, making it lack self-sufficiency and rendering it intrinsically less likely than a foundation that lacks limits. The problem for naturalism is that it implicitly posits these kinds of limits to explain reality. On naturalism, reality must have incomplete and arbitrary boundedness. This causes naturalism to have a theoretical cost in regard to simplicity, while giving theism a theoretical gain. The second problem an imperfect foundation faces is construction. An imperfect foundation lacks the resources for constructing the rest of reality. As I mentioned before, these are matter, minds, principles of morality, and principles of reason. A foundation of these things must then include the resources to produce these things. Only a perfect mental and moral nature includes the resources to construct the mental and moral dimensions of our world. Therefore, the foundation has a perfect mental and moral nature. The last argument I'll present will help solidify what I have just argued by exposing the nature of limits. Premise 1, every limit is explicable. Premise 2, the property, having limits, is itself a limit. Premise 3, therefore having limits is explicable by premise 1 and 2. Premise 4, if having limits is explicable, something could lack limits. 5, therefore something could lack limits by way of premise 3 and 4. 6, if something could lack limits, then something must be perfect. 7, therefore something must be perfect, i.e. God, by way of 5 and 6. On naturalism, the foundation of reality must be bounded and have limits. A foundation that lacks limits and is unbounded is something only theism can have. In my opening statement, I set out to lay a helpful theoretical framework to aid us in theory choice and presented two arguments in favor of theism. The first argument shows why the foundation of reality must be perfect, and the second argument shows why limited things point to something that lacks limits, something that's perfect. Lastly, I've demonstrated how an imperfect foundation that naturalism posits is a theory that lacks explanatory power and simplicity. I'm looking forward to the discussion, and thank you all for listening. And so I'll just end my time there.
All right, thank you, Travis and Tim, for those opening statements. And now we're going to hear from the naturalist side. So, Jared, we're going to start with you.
Awesome. Well, first, I want to say thank you for having us again and allowing us to participate in tonight's debate conversation. It's always a pleasure to be with you guys. So in order for either side to claim victory for tonight, they must show that their position is intrinsically more probable than the other. Unless you're a solipsist or think that you're just a brain in a vat somewhere, you agree that we share reality. This reality is physical, dare I say natural? Therefore, naturalism is the default position. If you want to add a layer of theism on top of that, you are now accepting the burden of proof. Naturalism is simply the position that everything has a natural cause or explanation. Theism then would be the opposite of that, meaning everything has a supernatural cause or explanation. We should take note, however, that these are just two possible explanations for reality, and there could be countless more. Just because one is false does not mean the other is true. In order for either naturalism or theism to be more probable than the other, it needs to have greater explanatory power. That is to say, it should make the least amount of assumptions, offer the most causal relations, and have greater predictive power. Let us take a look at a few examples, and we can see what we expect to find if either position were true. So if theism were true, we would expect religious beliefs to be universal. If there is one God, and this God has revealed itself to humanity, we would expect a single religion based on this revelation. If naturalism were true, we would expect different religious beliefs throughout history, many of them being inconsistent with each other as a result of them developing under different local conditions. If theism were true, we would expect that religious doctrines be consistent, reflecting that this theistic God is perfect and would want all of its creation to have an accurate understanding of its will. If naturalism were true, we would expect doctrines to adapt and change along with society, reflecting that doctrines would be decided upon and created by humans under social and historical contexts. If theism were true, we would expect the world be a perfect, we would expect the word of a perfect all-knowing God revealed in sacred texts and holy books to only offer us useful information. Think along the lines of instructing people to wash their hands, germ theory, stuff like that. So if naturalism were true, we would expect sacred texts to be a jumble of the good, the bad, and the ugly, reflecting that they were created by imperfect humans. On theism, if everything was designed by a perfect creator, we would expect biological forms to be perfect and never change. If naturalism were true, we would expect constant adaptation. If theism were true, we would expect that minds be completely independent from bodies. If naturalism were true, we would expect minds to be completely dependent on the body and affected by things like injury, fatigue, and illness. If theism were true, we would expect moral teachings to be transcendent and completely progressive from the beginning of time, reflecting the perfect moral nature to which they are based. If naturalism were true, moral teachings would be relative to location and change with the times, not always good or bad. If theism were true, we would expect the universe to be perfect. If naturalism were true, we would expect the universe to be an utter mess. Of the two worldviews in question tonight, only one of them seems to fit with the reality we all share. Now, some of you might be familiar with this example, but I think it highlights my point well. So imagine we both are looking at a bowl of colorful candies. Looking at the bowl, we can only see the top layer, but the ones that we can see all have the M&M logo stamped on it. We come up with two competing hypotheses. I say the bowl contains only M&Ms, naturalism. Our opponents say that the bowl contains mostly M&Ms, but has a few Skittles in it. It's theism. To test this hypothesis, we start pulling out candies from the bowl. We pull the first one out, and it's an M&M. Now you're going to argue, you knew that one was an M&M, you cherry-picked it because you saw the logo. Sure, but we keep on pulling out 2, then 5, 20, and so on. There are no amount of M&Ms we could pull, short of emptying the entire bowl, to prove there are 0 Skittles. However, the more M&Ms we pull without getting a Skittle, the more confident we can be in the hypothesis that the bowl contains only M&Ms. Now, obviously, we don't have time to go through and pull out every possible example from our candy bowl tonight. We are asking our opponents to pull out one single Skittle from the bowl. If they are not able to do so, I see no reason for us to prefer their model as the best explanation for reality.
All right, and then I think we're over to you, Jordan, for your 6-minute opening statement.
All right, thanks. So the question before us today is whether theism or naturalism is the better explainer of reality. The answer to this question, as to most questions, is it depends. In this case, it depends on what you mean by better. What makes a model of reality better? Is it better if it gives you hope for the future or meaning to your life? Should the better theory provide easy answers to all of life's questions, regardless of whether those answers are verifiably correct? Perhaps that's what some people look for in their models of reality. As for me, I'm an engineer, and engineers are a famously pragmatic species. What I care about is what is effective. And as such, I think the better model is the one that is most useful in making accurate predictions about the world around us. That's why we make theories, after all. We construct theories to give us a framework for analyzing data and making accurate predictions. Therefore, if we're confronted with two equally supported theories, I submit that we should prefer the one that is more useful. If equally useful, we should prefer the simpler one. Now, I'm not a philosophical naturalist. I allow that the supernatural could very well exist, though I remain unconvinced that it does in fact exist. Yet, if you force me to choose between theism and naturalism, I'd have to go with naturalism for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is because it is far and away the more useful framework for constructing theories. No great scientific theory has ever been made that is based on a theistic framework. Indeed, invoking a deity invariably stifles discovery. Newton, for example, contributed greatly to the science to the science we have today, including laws of motion we still use to put rockets on the moon. Yet there were things he didn't understand. Why didn't the solar system eventually spiral into disorder? Why were the planets all moving in the same direction? To fill these gaps, he invoked God. Problem solved. Now, had future scientists been satisfied with his theistic answer, which, after all, explained all of the evidence, then we'd still be at that level of understanding today. Fortunately, future scientists were not satisfied with that answer. Laplace expounded on Newton's discoveries and filled in some of those gaps that Newton had with his own scientific knowledge. In exchange, it's probably apocryphal, meaning it probably didn't happen. Laplace was questioned by Napoleon as to why he did not mention God in his theories. Laplace replied, "I had no need of that hypothesis." This is the reason that every serious scientist utilizes methodological naturalism, regardless of their own religious commitments. Theism explains everything easily. When you have access to magic, no phenomena lacks an explanation. Yet these easy answers, when taken seriously, prevent us from exploring deeper into the world, the way the world around us functions. If God did it is the answer, there's no need for further questioning, and questions drive discovery. Now, that's not to say that one cannot be both a theist and a scientist. According to Pew Research, about half of scientists are some flavor of religious, and many of them say that they see their scientific work as a way of exploring how God fashioned the universe that they live in. Nevertheless, none of them seriously use their theism as a framework when testing hypotheses, because such a framework leads nowhere. All scientists are atheists when they step into the lab. But wait, I hear you cry. Methodological naturalism excludes supernatural explanations a priori. You've decided that there won't be a supernatural explanation before you even start, so of course you never find a supernatural explanation. This is, at its root, an accusation of bias. We don't see the supernatural because we don't want to see it. Yet the track record of scientific success cannot merely be the result of bias. Bias doesn't put probes on passing asteroids or create new vaccines. Human history is overflowing with examples of natural explanations replacing magical ones. The reverse has never yet been true. So far, starting with the assumption that a given phenomena is natural has been a winning strategy. Given that track record, it would seem to be the worst brand of foolishness to posit magic as the first choice. But suppose we wanted to ditch this proven workhorse and give the theistic model its due. How would we go about doing that? To my knowledge, theists have yet to devise a method to detect supernatural forces at work. Examinations into prayer and miracles have always come up inconclusive at best and conclusively negative at worst. Of course, if a deity did exist, they could easily act in ways that would be clearly supernatural, rearranging the stars in the sky, supernaturally heating churches in ways that defy thermodynamics, etc. But unfortunately, the deity that we have, if we have one, seems, for whatever reason, to have chosen the inconvenient strategy of acting exclusively in ways that could be plausibly interpreted as natural. Given that, how would we distinguish between a supernatural event and a low probability natural event, or perhaps a natural event that we just don't yet understand? After all, up till now, mysteries have had the habit of turning out to be mundane natural events. So when given a certain observation, how would we determine that this time it really is supernatural? Perhaps our interlocutors have the answers to that question. I know I don't. Now, none of this shows that the supernatural doesn't exist, of course, and it doesn't show that theism is false. It is and likely will always be a logical possibility. But it's not up to me, the naturalist, to exclude the supernatural. It's up to the theist to prove that the supernatural they require it actually exists. As far as I know, they have yet to do so, but maybe we'll see it tonight. I don't know. In conclusion, science grounded in naturalism is the most successful human endeavor to date. From satellites to computer screens, naturalism continues to yield bountiful harvests. It has proven its worth repeatedly over the course of human history. When it comes to exploring the nature of our reality, nothing achieves results like naturalism. From this engineer's perspective, if that doesn't make it better, then I don't know what would.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you so much for those opening statements. Russell, you had something to say before we go in?
Nope. I was just gonna jump in there and see if how we wanted to do the informal part. Do we want to tag team it? Like, you want to stifle it? Like Travis will ask the first questions to get the ball rolling, and then Jordan maybe the second, and then Tim the third, and Jared the fourth. Or do you guys just want to go at it?
Sorry. Go ahead. No, you went before me.
Okay, so I like the round robin or giving someone a chance to ask questions, but whatever.
Okay.
What were you going to say, Tim?
Okay, well.
Oh, I was just gonna I was just gonna go with kind of the free flowing nature of it, but
let's
I don't know
let
what
it
you guys
go.
think.
Let's let the theist side begin just with some questions for the atheist side, since I think as I understood the statements, it's the idea is, or at least our naturalists are saying that the theists here have the burden of proof. So let's let the theists begin asking some questions, and then Travis, I'll let you go first, and then if we're getting bogged down or something, we can jump in and give the naturalists a chance to throw some fire that way. But basically, we'll let it flow pretty naturally. But Travis, open us up with questions.
I see what you did there.
Okay, so basically, in this conversation, we're both arguing the affirmative, and to begin with, I know you made predictions and everything, but one of the problems with that is it's kind of committing God psychology, like God should do this according to my interpretation. God should do this and not this. We should expect this. So I don't really see that as being valid. I mean, it's just committing God psychology. And moreover, the importance is actually the theological message, not to impart advanced science to us, but to give us a model to live by theologically. And then with suffering and things like that, I would apply a free will theodicy, a soul-making theodicy. And another thing to make clear, I know you brought up magic, that's a common thing atheists like to say, but my position is that God works through the natural laws of physics, but not within them. I'm not an intelligent design proponent. I think God works through the natural laws. I mean, I'm an idealist. So I didn't really see that as being very convincing that you have a better explanation than theism.
Well,
especially, given the argument of like, everything we see, like, with the laws of physics, the precision. Now, I'm not doing really a fine tuning argument, but that everything has to be precise. Like, it's goal oriented.
It should be finely tuned.
I can take
so it should be precise, or if I could rephrase, finely tuned.
Yeah. But if I may, Travis,
because you've asked like 3 questions so far, so let's take them in order.
Well, I'm sorry.
I'll respond to you're saying you're arguing that the theistic God is using naturalism to come about with these means, and I highlight that in my example that you're trying to place a skittle in our bowl of M&Ms here. You're saying all of our evidence for naturalism is accurate. But then you're taking it one level further and saying, yeah, but my God did that. And what I'm saying is you haven't demonstrated that the God actually did that. Yeah, so it's like you're borrowing from our worldview and Psi 10 Brutenkate language to argue your own.
If we're not supposed to play God psychology, then how are we supposed to use theism to make predictions? Like, what predictions should we make?
Oh, okay, so one prediction is that the universe would be orderly, like the universal applicability of mathematics and everything. I think is much more probable given theism than naturalism. And what I'm saying is like I'm taking it back to a necessary first cause, because naturalism, like there's no explanation of why things are the way they are.
What method are you using to assess the probability that a world would be more ordered under a theistic versus natural? Like, how many universes have you compared? Because I'm guessing the answer is 1, and a sample size of 1 is bad for assessing probabilities. So what are you using specifically to assess this probability?
That okay, if with the universal applicability of mathematics and the fact that our cognitive abilities can do science and research, I would say it's more probable that we live in a universe that was created by an intelligence. I mean,
Okay.
do you not see that? What's the problem with it?
I get that you're asserting that. I'm asking, you said that the universe that we live in is ordered, and it's more likely to be ordered under theism than naturalism. I'm asking,
Right, it's a philosophical argument.
So what are you using to, you're assessing the probability somehow. I know you have asserted that that's the probability. How are you assessing the probability?
Because it shows order, reason, intelligence behind the universe.
We can have order completely naturally. I mean, order arrives all the time naturally. So I don't see. Whenever ice freezes, have you ever looked at the crystal lattice in ice or any material when it does a phase change? If you look at the crystal lattice of a metal, for example, or in graphite, it's extremely well ordered. And that's unless you think that God is placing every atom in place, that's clearly order arriving out of nature. So the fact that there is order, it doesn't seem to me, is necessarily indicative that someone put it there.
Right, but interestingly, the order in nature assumes teleology, that its goal, or it has an order to it. That's teleology.
I don't see why order should be a problem. Like, what's the issue? I just don't see. I don't see why there has to be someone at the beginning of time saying there shall be order. Like, I have no problem accepting that we live in an ordered universe for several reasons. First of all, you could just invoke the weak anthropic principle. It's hard for me to. I'm not saying necessarily, because I don't know enough about life to say that there couldn't be, but it's hard for me to imagine how life could arise in a place where the laws of physics changed every day. So
you're basically appealing to the puddle analogy. Is that it?
Well, I'm saying that I don't require a God in order to adequately explain why we live in an ordered universe. Just to have an arrow of time, you have to have a low entropy beginning, or at least a low entropy state proceeding in order to have an arrow of time. So I don't see why a God has to be there.
Okay, so I've made two arguments, and I haven't really heard a response to them. Tim, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I wanted to bring Tim in to see. Tim, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so the first, I guess I'll just start with a question, or what am I doing?
Any way you want, buddy.
Yeah, if you want.
Okay, so I'll just ask our interlocutors here, what type of hypothesis do you think theism is?
Yeah, that's a good one.
So, well, Jared, you're the theologian, so why don't you answer that?
Yeah, if the hypothesis is that theism is the reason behind everything, right? So without this theistic God, nothing would take place. It's there to be the prime mover, is what I hear you guys arguing. That without the prime mover, you wouldn't have anything like morals, you wouldn't have anything like physics, you wouldn't have anything like the universe. But it's not really my place to tell you what your argument should be, though.
Oh no, I'm just wondering, because if we have our presuppositions wrong, then we're going to be talking past each other the entire conversation.
No,
so
I
we
totally
need to be
agree.
on the same page. So before we get to the disagreeing bit, we need to get to the understanding bit first. So with what Jared just described, given my understanding, Jared and Jordan are actually in disagreement upon what they're arguing against, because Jared actually is describing something not as in line with what I'm arguing, but more in line than what Jordan is arguing. So that's why I'm bringing this up. So I'll just go ahead and clarify.
Did I invoke a God in my? I must have must have really messed up if I invoked God as an explanation.
Well, we already converted you last time you were on.
Yeah.
So.
No, what I'm saying is that the type of theistic thesis that Jared described is more in line with what I am describing than what you are describing, Jordan.
No, I was trying to read back to you the kind of thing that you told me in your argument is what I was trying to do.
Right.
I don't necessarily agree with that, though.
No, I don't say you have to agree with it. I'm just saying that you got my position more accurately than Jordan is at this point.
Well, since I wrote my opening prior to hearing your argument, that's a prediction I would have made.
Well,
so since I apparently lack all understanding of your position, why don't you explain your position to me?
Well, no, that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just saying that there are, from Jordan, from what I'm hearing in your responses back and forth with Travis, what I'm seeing is there's a crucial presupposition that is lacking here, and that's all the reason. That's the only thing I'm trying to clear up, which is I want us all to be on the same page. So this is not about that you're just not understanding things. It's just that there's some things that I just want to clear up so that we are on the same page, so that we're not attacking straw men, but that we're steel manning.
All right, well then, do it, brother.
So, so theism is a metaphysical explanatory hypothesis, not a scientific one. So with that, any natural explanation, I concede all natural explanations. Thomas Aquinas he looked at reality in terms of primary and secondary causes, not in supernatural and natural. I actually reject that distinction. I don't think it's helpful. So that's what theism isn't positing God in processes. Theism is providing an explanation for why there's processes at all.
Right.
So that is what I'm arguing for. It's a metaphysical theory of reality. These sets of facts that we are required to explain are metaphysical, not scientific.
You're actually arguing for deism, though, in my opinion. You haven't made the jump to theism yet. And
Travis.
Okay, so if I could chime in real quick, going back to both of them, like the question of theism is a philosophical, metaphysical conclusion. So it's not a scientific data. What we're doing is making philosophical conclusions based on the science. So, we're not really trying to argue for it scientifically, if that's the route.
Okay.
The route
I have no need for your hypothesis. If I don't require a God to explain any observation, then why should I have one?
Well, I mean, that's your you're welcome to your psychological state.
Why should I? If I have a perfectly good explanation for the universe, and I get all the way from where I am to the earliest observation, and God doesn't need to be involved at all anyway, because you said you conceded all natural phenomena. Okay, so if everything we observe has a natural explanation, and then you're like, oh yeah, but then put God at the beginning. Like, why?
Well, no, you have no philosophical grounding for why it should be there in the first place, which is what we're arguing for contingency.
Right, but I would say that, I would say, Travis, that sure.
Okay.
But we're perfectly comfortable saying we don't know why it's there, and our arguments, I don't know if you saw how we structured it, was to say that every explanation that's ever been presented throughout history has been either a natural explanation or a natural explanation replacing a supernatural explanation that was there before. And so if we're walking down a road and we see red house after red house after red house after red house, we could be pretty rest assured that the next house we come across is a red house.
We don't know that. We don't know that for certain.
Yeah, we don't know for certain, but we can make a prediction that that's what it's going to be. And so what you're kind of doing here is this is a fancy version of God of the Gaps. Like, we've moved the goalpost all the way back to the beginning, and now you're saying that at the beginning we needed God there to be the prime mover, to have all these structures in place so that way we could be the way we are today. And we're saying that we don't know if that's the case, but we're perfectly comfortable saying we don't know, and you haven't really provided evidence for it. You've provided some arguments, which I don't know if I wasn't able to write down all of your premises, but I don't know if I agree with all of them, first of all.
Tim, hey, Travis, hold on. Let's get Tim back in here, because we were going with a couple questions from him. So go ahead, Tim.
No, I just wanted to ask Jared, because he brought in the fancy God of the Gaps, just trying to do more of the understanding bit here. Can you what's your definition of God of the Gaps, just real quick?
So my definition of God of the Gaps is, so if we have a gap in our knowledge, we put God in that gap. That's literally what God of the Gaps is to me. So my gap in the knowledge for the beginning of the universe is a gap in knowledge. I'm saying I don't know. And I'm saying that you are placing God in that gap to fill that hole. And a layman's basic level understanding.
Okay, so that's really helpful. That I have now that I have your definition. Yeah, so I completely reject God of the Gaps arguments, which is primarily why I'm not an intelligent design advocate. So I'm actually sorry, Dave. I know that you and I have disagreed on that. I'm not trying to say anything about you, but I'm just saying that's where I'm at. So you and I are on the exact same page. That's something that you and I can be united together. We can kind of we have our two lights, and we've both seen that together. Like, okay, no God of the Gaps. But I just want to clarify real quick. God of the Gaps was coined by a man named Henry Drummond, I believe, and it's the reason why it's a fallacy is because you insert God into a physical phenomenon to explain it when we don't have a physical explanation of that phenomenon. Now, I think that is completely wrong, and because as philosopher Richard Swinburne argues, there's two types of explanations. There's explanations in terms of the laws of nature and initial conditions, and then there's explanations in terms of agency or a personal explanation. And so if something can be explained in terms of the initial conditions, laws of nature, then I concede that. Now, you mentioned, if I heard you correctly, you said, I can say I don't know about the beginning of the universe. Now, I never mentioned anything about a beginning of the universe. Even in my opening statement, I mentioned that you could have a past, eternally existing set of an infinite regress. And that is not a sufficient explanation as to why there exists a past, eternally except. So the universe can be past eternal. I will grant that for sake of conversation. But what I'm asking is for your foundations. Why a past, eternally existing set of infinite regress? And if we're going to look at the theoretical virtues such as simplicity, explanatory power, unification, and predictive accuracy, what on a naturalistic hypothesis where you start with non-mind, will you get a type of set of something existing, something like a fact like that obtaining in reality? That's what I'm asking as the theist.
Can I just clarify real quick?
Yeah.
So are you saying that there's an infinite regress, but the infinite regress has a start, and that start is a mind?
No, I'm talking about I'm just granting an infinite regress for the sake of saying it doesn't go against my arguments or my beliefs.
All right, that makes sense now.
So
Yeah.
You're saying that if the universe is past eternal, we figured out the physical mechanisms, Sean Carroll's method model was correct. We've got it all the way from right to now. That's all fine. And you want to know why?
Yeah, because that doesn't support naturalism.
Then
that just says that there's a natural explanation, but that doesn't support naturalism.
I have to be completely honest. I could not care less because it doesn't matter. You're not owed a why. The universe is under no obligation to give you a why. By what right do you demand a why? There might not be a why. You have no basis on which to say that there must be a why. If I can explain every observation from the beginning, from past eternal to future eternal, then we're done. Pack it up, boys. Like, learning's done. I just don't understand what the motivation is.
Yeah, so my motivation is not an incredulous one. It's one trying to be consistent with reason, the light of reason, and my explanatory principles. So I'm operating off of explanatory principles. I'm trying to follow them up until they will terminate. And so I guess the next question would be, we should be on the same page, I guess, when it comes to our explanatory principles, in which we are measuring what deserves an explanation and what doesn't deserve an explanation, something that can illuminate why a particular fact obtains and why a particular fact might not obtain. So I guess I would just ask you, what are your principles in which you are using to inform your not caring?
So when you say, why did X happen, when you're talking about something like an asteroid moving or an electron tunneling, why is synonymous with how? What principle caused it, right? The only time when they're not the same is when there's a person who you could ask some kind of motivation for, right? Why did you move that cup? That implies a motivation. I'm saying, and it seems to me that you're using the how why when what you should be, or you're using the cup why, the person why, the mind why, when what you should be using is the how why. How did the universe come into being? If we already know how, and God didn't need to be involved in that, then why should we add that?
So yeah, I'm on the same page with you on that. But remember earlier when I talked about two different kinds of explanations. We don't want to beg the question here because you, and I'm not trying to call you out. I'm not trying to say that you're doing anything.
I mean, if I am, totally call me out.
But I'm just saying, it seems that you are biasing one particular type of explanation in terms of the initial conditions and laws of nature. I already said that I'm fine with that. For example, why is the water boiling? The irritation and the speed of the molecules. Okay, I'm fine with that. And then there's a personal explanation, which is somebody wanted a desire to have a cup of tea, for example.
Okay, I'm with you.
So I'm not concerned with asteroids and how they move. I'm concerned, and that's a physical concern. I'm concerned with the metaphysical, which is what this whole debate is about. Theism and naturalism are metaphysical hypotheses about reality. So I'm not concerned with how the physical works. I'm concerned with which theory best predicts why the physical works the way it does.
Let me tell you all both something. I am worried about asteroids because if one is on the trajectory of our planet, then I am going to worry about it. But anyway,
don't worry.
Nice. Go ahead,
David. Don't worry. We got Bruce Willis down here. We're all good, brother.
Yeah, he's still alive, man. Yeah, he didn't die of COVID or anything. So yeah, we might be able to send him out. Go ahead, Jordan.
It seems like a little bit of question begging or circular reasoning if you're saying, but why the universe? Isn't that personal why? The personal reason? You're assuming that there is in fact one. Which it seems to me you'd have to demonstrate that there is in fact one. I don't see any reason a priori why there should be.
Okay. Well, Travis, I'm going to let you jump in here real quick. You're muted right now, bud. So. You're muted, bud.
You're muted.
On Skype, you're muted.
There we go.
There you go.
Did you hear me?
I'm going to let you jump in. Yeah, I'm going to let you jump in. I saw your hand up, so.
Yeah. Because Tim and I would both agree, with like natural, the laws of physics and everything. But our argument is more like metaphysical and philosophical. And I'm wondering how you get that mechanism explains away agency.
I don't require an agent.
You would need to. You would need to offer an explanation, like how a mechanism itself can explain away an agency. I just don't see that.
Where's the agent?
You haven't demonstrated the agent or the agency.
Okay, well, in my first argument, I presented evidence of emergent spacetime from information processing and how it correlates to quantum cognition.
Well, let's get into that then. You basically made a fine-tuning argument, and so you said things like we have just the right ratio. That you were talking about the ratios between the fundamental forces and precise inputs.
Well, that was the first argument, but okay, yeah.
Yeah, and you used that to say basically there had to be somebody fiddling with the dials. There's an agent who's intending for this universe to support life. Is that accurate?
Well, no, basically, sort of. What I'm saying is that the amount of precision is more indicative of an intentional state, and we know that intentionality is a property of mind.
How many universes did you survey to come up with that conclusion?
There's only one universe that we're aware of.
So your statistical basis for that assumption, for that judgment, is a sample size of 1. How precise? How precise should entropy?
That does not get rid of the fact that everything has to be precise in order for advanced life to be here.
First of all, you don't know if you define universe as all of reality, then there's only one.
Yeah, let me just step in real quick, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but I can actually grant a multiverse. Because I'm a proponent of superstring theory, so I'm fine with the multiverse.
Okay, then there you go. The reason that our local observable universe.
But that doesn't explain.
It's fine. You want to talk? You go ahead and talk.
Well, no, I was going to say that the multiverse doesn't explain away the fine tuning, and we can get into that if you want.
It absolutely.
It does explain it away because if you have infinite universes, the chances that we're going to have one that supports life are really high.
Well, no. What it is, it's survivorship bias. So if
Yeah.
we have a multiverse where the laws of physics change from place to place because of the configuration of strings or whatever kind of physics you want to assume, then the universes where you find life will be the ones with conditions suitable for life. There's nothing miraculous. It's survivorship bias. If you didn't have a universe that was sufficient for life, there'd be no life around to comment on it.
Also, you're suggesting, Travis, that you're saying there's an appearance of design, there's an appearance of a purpose behind all this stuff, but we're asking you to demonstrate that there actually is, and you're just saying that there's an appearance. I don't see how you get from an appearance of design to actually going there.
I explained how we have to have, the precision in the strong, weak nuclear forces, the gravitational force, and how even plate tectonics and all this has to be precise in order for us to be here. So now going back to a multi.
I don't need a multiverse to explain on the planet. The planet, that's just the puddle problem. They're based on we don't have a lot of data yet on livable planets, but we have every reason to suspect with the size of space that there will be billions, if not trillions, of planets in the habitable zone. So I don't need any kind of multiverse to explain why. Cool. Then the whole thing with anything about conditions on Earth is no longer valid. Continue.
No. Okay. So what I'm saying is that, what we have to have the precision is not just on the planet, but on the four fundamental forces and the way the United Force broke. We have to have the precision, in the electromagnetic force constant to the gravitational force constant. And in fact, we have to have, the ratio of the electron mass to the proton mass for molecules to even bond together. And what I'm saying is that's we have to have that precision.
What do you think the odds are that would happen by chance?
By chance? So are you appealing to the multiverse or just like a random chance?
Because I'm asking if we roll the dice again for however many n number of things you think however many dials you think are precisely tuned. What are the odds that those would come out in a way that would be conducive for life of some sort?
I don't know because it's not just a matter of probability and improbability alone. I mean, shuffle a deck of cards and, what are the chances of getting an ace of hearts? I mean, it's extremely unlikely, but it would have no significance, no purpose. I mean, we're talking about galaxies and universes coming into being. So a lot of it is what I'm arguing for is the precision in the mechanistic function more than just probability, improbability.
That's a distinction without a difference. If there's a million, billion, if the chances of this precisely tuned set of constants or whatever, the prevalence of antimatter in the beginning universe, however many precise conditions you want to put out, all of those could vary, you're saying. In order for it to be precise, in order for that word to have any kind of meaning, then it would have to have possibly been otherwise, right? Otherwise, there's no precision because it just is the way it is. So in order for that to be significant, it would have to be, you're saying that it's precise, and so therefore that's an indication of an agent. But I'm saying if there's a 1 in a trillion chance of it happening, if you have a trillion trials, it's going to happen. There is nothing significant about that. So if you're granting the multiverse,
my argument,
David, you're muted.
My bad, guys. Yeah, I did want to jump in here because Jared had his hand up. I want him to jump in here and give his thoughts real quick. And then I kind of want to switch it up, guys. I want to switch it up for the atheists to take the lead and lead the questions that way, so we can get a little bit more. I've given about a little over 10 minutes to the theists, so we're gonna do the same for the atheists.
We've kind of been asking questions back and forth, so I'm totally fine. But I was just gonna ask, suppose we had a natural explanation that accounted for all your variables, that accounted for all the precision that you saw. Let's say we were able to present that. Would you still see a need for a theistic God?
Yes, because it's a philosophical conclusion.
Okay, so why are you bothering? Why are you bothering with fine tuning then? If that's what you're arguing for, just go to the thing that you're arguing for. That's our argument. So you just said that if I gave you a natural explanation for all those dials and all those tunings, you would still say there's a God necessary. And we're asking you, all right, but why? like that's the question we want to know.
With everything pointing in the same direction, the philosophical argument is that, intentional states are the product of mind, and that with everything pointing in the same direction, it's indicative of an intentional state.
So it's only indicative of an intentional state if it was unlikely to be otherwise. Things can all point the same direction naturally. By chance, it happens sometimes. So there's nothing. You have yet to show the intentionality, particularly if you want to grant the multiverse. If you want to grant a multiverse, then it's trivial. It's on you to show intentionality with all of these things pointed the same way.
Okay, so let me first address the multiverse. In fact, I like Hugh Ross's argument that if you want to apply a multiverse to the fine tuning, you would need an infinite amount of multiverses for each fine-tuned perimeter. So you would need infinity upon infinity upon infinity to where science would no longer even be valid. Like everything would be explained by the universe.
That's
self-defeating.
Okay, well, first of all, you already granted a past eternal universe, so I've got all the infinities I need. I didn't even ask for that. You just offered it, so I'll take it.
Well, that would go back to my original argument that, space-time being emergent from information, that any spatial temporal dimensions would be an emergent feature of the underlying information processing. So we're kind of, that wasn't part of the fine-tuning. That was part of my first argument.
Okay, so I don't understand why the holographic principle invokes a deity. So far as I'm aware, I've read. I'm not a physicist. I only have a minor in physics, so I don't claim to understand. I don't claim to be a cosmologist. I've read a couple papers on the holographic principle, and none of them concluded that there was a deity. So,
and no, I'm not saying that alone. What I'm doing is I'm taking studies in quantum cognition, which state that information, like our thought, decision making, is describable in quantum mechanics like information processing in an entangled state, and it's the same type of properties that space-time is emergent from under Sean Kerr's model. So it shows that the information that space-time is emergent from would have mental properties.
Okay, so
and then I could now listen, and that's why I said I could grant what you would consider an infinite regress, an infinite multiverse, because any spatial temporal dimension would be an emergent feature of that underlying information process.
If you're saying that quantum mechanics explains our cognition, our mind, then all you've told me is that our mind is natural. So
no, that doesn't follow.
But if you said,
in fact, my view on consciousness is that it's entangled within a brain, but that's a separate issue.
What do you think entanglement means?
I'm sorry.
What do you so because it's entangled, it's a separate issue, right? Is that what I just heard you say?
No, I was explaining that's kind of like the mind-body problem. I think if you were trying to get into that, and I'm saying my view on that is that our conscious state is entangled within a brain and needs a brain to operate. But going back to quantum cognition, it's like
Okay, hold on. You're saying it's my mind is like entangled with a brain, right? How?
Right, you're not understanding the argument.
My mind is entangled with my brain such that it requires a brain in order to operate. That's what you said, right?
Yes, and what I'm saying with quantum cognition, it's like perception, memory, decision making can be explained in terms of information processing in entangled state, which is the same type of properties that space-time is emergent from. It can be mathematically described in Hilbert space by the same mechanism, and so that would show that there's a mind behind the universe.
All right, so if I'm hearing this correctly, I think Travis has given an argument that what we are seeing from what would be required at that quantum level is at least similar in some way to what we are seeing if we see what happens in the mind. Jordan, I will give you a chance to respond to that, but then I want to bring Tim back in to get his thoughts on this because he's been quiet over there for a while. But Jordan, rebuttal from you first.
I don't know how you would determine the difference between my brain is the one doing the thinking and there's a mind that's got that is in a quantum superposition and is entangled with my brain. Like I don't see the mechanism by which you would differentiate between the two things. And given those two things, I can either have quantum mechanics, or I can have quantum mechanics and something else. If they both explain it equally well, let's just get rid of the something else.
Okay.
So, Tim.
And that's a good point, and I understand your point. And if I could just address that real fast. Okay, so what I'm saying is that space-time is emergent from the same quantum properties that we have. So an objection will be, well, why can't we create reality? And that's because our consciousness is entangled within a brain. So,
All right.
so that's why I wanted to clarify that. But
ahead,
the
Tim.
actual
To Tim, let's bring you back in here. What are your thoughts on this, or do you want to take the conversation a different direction?
I mean, it's interesting back and forth. No, I mean, I guess I want to. I'm really concerned on us being on the same page in terms of the our lines of reasoning and argumentation. So I think we spun our wheels quite a bit on fine tuning here. So I just want to ask, do we so I presented in my argument, I presented the perfect foundation argument, because I just like to see this as questions about the foundations, which is the nature of reality. What are the foundations? Is the foundations theistic, or is it non-theistic? That's what I'm concerned with. And so in that way, maybe we're all naturalists, maybe we're all theists. To me, like I said, I think that the supernatural natural distinction gets pushed farther and farther as time goes on. What we call supernatural changes into things that are natural. I don't think it's a helpful distinction, and I don't think the theist needs it to be a theist, and I don't think they ever really did. So that's not trivial on my part whatsoever. But I want to ask, do you guys believe reality in total is self-sufficient with no outside cause or explanation?
Yeah, I have no reason to think otherwise. I'm here. I'm sharing a reality with you. It seems pretty self-evident.
I will go on that assumption until I'm given a good reason not. I'll go with it. That seems simpler to me. Going with the reality I observe and can detect and measure. And so as long as that remains sufficient to explain everything I see, then I don't have a need to add anything else. So I guess yes would be the short answer.
All right.
Cool.
So what I'm seeing then is, Tim, you're presenting, you're saying, let's just grant that we've got, the infinite universe here. And then you want to ask a why question, or what's the foundation for that? And it seems to me that the naturalists here, they're saying we don't need a why, we don't need a foundation, good as is. So how do you want to take it from there to show them that they need a foundation, that they need a why?
Well, that's what I'm trying to show is we all have our foundations. That the naturalist is positing that the foundation of reality is non-intentional, mindless, and impersonal. And what the theist is doing is we're just flipping those. We're saying it's personal, it's mind, and it's intentional. And however the physics are, is irrelevant when we come to the foundations, is what I'm trying to expose. That's why I'm trying to get away from mechanisms here, because I'm trying to stick with the metaphysics, because that's what this question is really about. So the reason why I asked is reality in total self-sufficient with no outside cause or explanation, it's really what I'm asking is, nothing can exist outside the totality of everything. That's a contradiction. And we're all fine thinking people here. Contradictions are not things. They don't exist. So the totality, nothing can exist outside the totality of existence. If that is true, then the totality of reality is uncaused. There is something that exists that is uncaused. So we both agree at that point that there's something that must exist, that has an independent nature and has no cause. So we're both agreeing that the foundation of reality has no cause. Are we on the same page when it comes to that?
I think so. I'm gonna say tentatively yes.
Jordan, your audio is also kind of low, so
And my mic.
I can hear you.
Is that better?
It's just decreased strangely in the middle of the stream or the call.
All right. Well, Jared can talk, and I'll increase my gain.
Yeah, I'm rolling that question around in my head very carefully because I don't want to give an answer until I fully understand it. But I'm with Jordan. I tentatively would say that I agree with that statement.
Okay. So I think what's clearest, being consistent with reason, is that nothing can exist outside the totality of existence. So existence is closed. Existence is causally closed. So if that's true, then there is no cause of that. So if there is no something uncaused, that's just the first cause. And what I'm saying is this is not like a runaround trick thing. Like we can all accept that there's a first cause. You can be an atheist and completely accept that there's a first cause, that this is not a problem. But I just want to know that if we disagree on something as fundamental as that, I would like to know before moving on. That's the only reason why I bring that up. So if reality in total is self-sufficient, then that points us back to the foundations. Okay, everything proceeds from this totality of the self-sufficiency, this independent nature that's the ground layer of reality. Now, what I'm arguing is I'm just simply saying, okay, if we observe the set of facts, the fundamental aspects of reality, these are physics, this is matter, minds, consciousness, embodied agents that can form moral communities, the principles of reason, having sensory experiences that allow us to make rational decisions, apprehend things rationally, and then the universe's mathematical investigatable structure. If we look at these of these fundamental aspects about reality, and we look back at the foundations, and then we take our two hypotheses, given the theoretical virtues I laid out, simplicity, unification, predictive power, and explanatory power, I'm looking at the foundations and going, okay, well, which one actually has the resources and the predictive power to explain these things? So if I start with matter, for example, we both agree that matter exists, and matter would then be a part of the self-sufficient totality. But then matter would be dependent upon that. So if we're looking at that, then our self-sufficient totality as a foundation has causal powers. It has power of some sort. Now I'm gonna stop right here and ask, what are you guys thinking on that? Our foundations we're agreeing upon has causal powers.
I'm losing you a little bit. I would need to see this in writing, first of all. That's how my brain works. But you're going from there is no cause, infinite, eternal, to cause. And there's a jump there where I'm not catching what you're laying down right now.
Okay, sure, yeah. Okay, so basically, and stop me if you need any more clarification. So what I'm saying is the totality of reality must be self-sufficient because nothing is outside of the totality of reality. This is the totality of everything, right? And so it would be causally closed. This totality cannot have a cause because it's just the totality. That's a contradiction to say it has a cause. So that's the uncaused first cause part. But we know that there's an initial state when it comes to reality in which matter, physics, and things are dependent upon. And these are dependent upon the powers in which the initial state has, the causal powers. Do we agree on that? That part.
Maybe it's because I'm a stupid engineer, but
So
I'm just not see. I'm not see. What can we cut to the chase? Like, give me the explain it like I'm 5. Pretend I'm not a philosopher, and then
so let's
explain
take this,
it to me.
Let's take this White Claw. This White Claw is reality. All right, and this is it. So it's self-sufficient. There's nothing that exists outside of this. So there's nothing that can cause this.
Nothing exists outside of White Claw. What a bleak universe.
I know. Hey, forgive me, man. So yeah, so this is it right here. But as we see, there's a ground layer in which there's a foundation, and this whole White Claw comprises all the fundamental aspects of reality: matter, minds, embodied agents forming moral communities, consciousness, etc., and so forth. This is what reality is. Now, what I'm asking, I'm trying to get us onto the same page, starting very simply, is matter behaves a particular way and does particular things. So the foundations, the independent nature of the self-sufficient totality, has causal powers of some sort. And powers just means an ability to bring about a particular effect. For example, I can bring about the effect of picking up this White Claw. I have as a Homo sapien, those are my causal power. That's a part of my causal powers. But if we look at reality, the totality and the foundations of that, it's also going to have causal powers, because how could other things have causal powers without the foundations having causal powers? That just makes no sense. So do we agree at least that the foundations has causal powers? Because the initial state, what I mean by the initial state is just, I guess the initial state, like the state in which everything causally unfolds from, has the powers to bring about a particular causal unfolding. That's all I'm asking. Okay. So do you guys agree that it has to have some causal powers to found our foundations?
Sure. Now show me the jump to God. I've been primed. I'm ready to be converted.
Well, the thing is that when we're thinking about this deep, when we're talking about metaphysics, we have to get our steps carefully here. I'm sorry, I can't just jump like that. That's not how this works. Nobody does that in the literature either. This is very important that we understand our framework here. Okay, so if it has causal powers, then how much power does it have is the next question. Now, the reason why I ask that is on naturalism, its power is limited. There are a limited amount of particles. There's a limited speed, maximum. Well, we call it the maximum speed, but it's of the universe. There's a certain amount of entropy, galaxies, etc., and so forth. And my question would be, why are we? Those limits, to me, looking at the light of reason, are arbitrary. These are cutoffs that the foundation is producing, and the foundation has when it brings about its effects. So, for example, being consistent with reason, let's just think about it. Could there be one more particle in this universe?
Could there be? Sure. I mean,
sure.
Virtual
Can I ask
particles.
You a question real quick to make sure? So you're saying that naturalism is limited and theism is unlimited. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah. I mean, naturalism as a hypothesis.
In the totality of everything.
Yeah.
If God is in the totality of everything, God is unlimited within everything, and naturalism is limited within everything.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So can you give me an example of something that we see in the world today that is caused or by a theistic God that naturalism could not have caused?
You're going to be more specific about that question.
Well, I'm asking you, if you're saying there's a difference in that God and this theistic God of yours is unlimited, and that naturalism is limited, I'd like an example of something that naturalism caused that is limited, and an example of something that theism caused that is unlimited.
So what I'm talking about is what the hypotheses assert, rather than, I guess, the goings on. What I'm saying that I'm looking at them as theories right now.
Well,
I'm looking at them as what they assert, like their theses, and naturalism implicitly posits limits, while theism doesn't.
Right, but in the argument tonight, we're asking what is the better explanation for reality. And Jordan and I have presented a case where naturalism accounts for the most things that we see. It is the better explanation for the majority of things.
Okay.
So I'd like an example of what is theism, an example of that better explains something within our reality in the totality of everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say that theism has a gain on the theoretical virtue of simplicity over naturalism, simply because it doesn't arbitrarily posit limits to explain things, while naturalism does. And I would like to know, why does naturalism posit these arbitrary limits when it comes to explaining the fundamental aspects of reality?
it doesn't posit
It
an
doesn't
arbitrary
posit
limit.
anything.
There's a certain amount of entropy in the universe. I didn't posit that, I measured it. I mean, it can grow infinitely into the future, assuming that you can have a multiverse and et cetera, et cetera. I won't go into the physics, but
Sorry.
So I don't, if this limited version is enough to explain all of the matter and energy we see, then sell me on this unlimited version.
Well, what I'm asking is we see limits, and it ties into why, like, what best explains and accounts for limits. And
the laws of physics and initial conditions of the universe.
Right, but we're saying that all we see is limits right now, and you haven't given us anything that's unlimited, unless I missed something.
You're asking me to accept a being that doesn't have limits, which is very different from anything I've ever observed. So
what I think Tim is trying to say here is that when we're looking at what is the best explanation, a simpler hypothesis is a better explanation. Mm-hmm. Saying that your hypothesis adds all of this stuff, all these limits to it, and that makes it a more complicated hypothesis, and therefore not as good an explanation as theism. Is that right, Tim?
Right. Yeah. Naturalism is going to posit limits in terms of matter, in terms of the types of entities in which matter produces. It's going to posit limits in terms of its capacities are restricted, and that's how it explains things. And I guess I'm wondering, like, when you speak of the laws of physics, I guess, well, what are your views on the laws of physics here? Like, you just say laws of physics, but like, what do you mean when you just throw out the laws of physics to explain things? Because the laws of physics,
I'm curious.
Are they just brute? Do they just have no explanation? Are they just the way they are?
Great question.
Yeah.
Okay, so
how the hell should I know?
So what I'm saying is, I think that a virtuous theory, a theory that should be preferred, is one that we should opt in for explained limits, explained contingency over unexplained limits or unexplained contingency when we can. And I think, being consistent with reason, we can. Something that is non-limited, because it seems that limits all have a uniformly alike property of having a further non-circular explanation.
Let's give Jordan a chance to answer that real quick.
I think so. So what you're saying is, you have no idea where the laws of physics come. I do. I have an explanation. It's God. So that makes my theory superior. Is that?
No, I'm saying that if I look at the foundations, I'm saying that the foundations has the resources to produce things that are limited.
Okay.
And that is a gain on predictive accuracy and explanatory power, than one that just stars with limits, and there is no explanation.
Okay, I'd prefer no theory to a conspiracy theory. Just because I can explain something with a model doesn't mean I should prefer it. And so, yes, if I invoked theism, I would have nothing left to explain because God can be whatever I need him to be. It's super convenient, but that doesn't mean that he exists. Just because I personally have no idea how the laws of physics came about, perhaps some superstring theory or something, but I don't know. That doesn't mean therefore God.
See, but we need to get back to what the laws of physics are for a second here. You said laws of physics come about, and that makes me think that we disagree upon what the laws of physics are. So I want to pass it to you and I guess get your definition of what you think the laws of physics are.
The laws of physics are what we observe. The way it's the name we give to the patterns that the world or reality we observe operates.
Okay, and so I think we're on the same page as that. So would you say that they're I guess descriptions?
Yeah.
Okay, so they're descriptive. So what are they describing?
They're describing matter in motion.
Right. And we have matter, we have these substances that behave a particular way. But these substances are able to bring about particular effects. They have powers. Okay. These substances have powers. So I guess I'm asking, what is the best explanation of these discrete independent powers that these substances have to bring about particular effects?
Are you asking me where the laws of physics come from? Like what granted?
Well, now we're at the level of substances and their powers. So like fundamental particles, you have electrons and you have things that form atoms, and these are the microphysical objects that form the macrophysical objects. But it's a chain of dependency. It's kind of a hierarchical chain of dependency. And once you get kind of to the level of the substances with the powers that they have, does the chain end of dependency? What do these substances depend on for their powers?
Eventually, you're going to have to terminate at something, right?
Okay, sure. Yeah. So sorry, go ahead.
I terminate with this is the matter and energy we observe, and it operates in certain ways. The end.
So there is no explanation for why the substances have limited powers.
There may be some deeper physics that I don't understand. We don't know yet, but those physics would be the termination. I don't see any virtue in saying, and yeah, your laws, they terminate, but my God terminates, and my God, like I don't. It just seems like you've just added another step for no reason.
Yeah, I don't think that substances necessarily have to be there to begin with. I'm not conceding that substances are a real thing. You're saying there's an appearance of substance, and so therefore there is substance, but I don't think that's a fact.
Wait, you don't think physical substances exist?
Not substance as in things, substance as in having causal powers, going back to the root of the thing, laws of physics. They just are laws of physics. They're the things that determine what something can and cannot do, right? But you're going down another level below that.
Yeah, well, this is where it gets us. We're in deep metaphysical waters now. This is where the whole conversation kind of gets us.
I think Jordan and I would both. Sorry to cut you off, Tim. I didn't mean to be rude, but I think Jordan and I would both agree we're not qualified, one, to talk on that, and two, it really doesn't matter for our worldview. If naturalism can explain things, and you're trying to say that naturalism can explain it because it doesn't have unlimited causal powers, and we're saying that even the limits, if we're going to grant you that naturalism has limits, is enough to explain everything we see anyways. Jordan, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but
yeah, no, and you know what? I appreciate your honesty on that. I just want to say one more thing, which is naturalism can explain it, but you're going to have to sacrifice simplicity. So it's going to have explanatory power, but you're going to lose on simplicity.
I dispute that a God is simple in any sense of the word that is meaningful. It's simpler to say. I can certainly say God in just one word and boom, I'm done. But just because I can say it in one word doesn't make it simple. You're positing this unlimited being completely different from anything we've ever observed that has all of these powers. I don't know. That doesn't seem simple to me.
David, you want to say something?
Yeah, and I think we beat
Yeah,
that
Russell.
horse enough right there. You know, our drum's been beaten for a while there. But so I just want to give you guys each a minute to close here because we're hitting about an hour and 30. I know you guys are getting tired, so I can see Jordan kind of sloping, you know. I know when Jordan's tired, I've seen him talk long enough to where he's just like, I'm done.
Yeah, no, Jordan, you've been talking a while, man. Yeah, no, it's cool. It's cool.
But no,
Okay.
yeah, guys, you guys had a great debate, and I would love to just give you guys a second to close. We'll start with the theists since they started, and we'll end with the naturalists.
Okay, so
Travis,
I
you're
guess
good.
I'll go ahead and start.
1
Just
minute.
go in the same
Okay.
order.
All right, yeah. So to be honest, I'm a little bit disappointed in the debate because I think a lot of the argument was misunderstood. My argument was that, you know, when we compare quantum cognition with emergent spacetime, it has the same characteristics, indicating that, you know, through the holographic principle in the holographic universe, that spacetime is emergent from a mind, and then dependent on that, we have the precision in the laws of physics and the universal applicability of mathematics and everything. And so it was kind of attacked like, you know, well, the fine tuning, well, how many universes can you compare it to and everything? And what I'm saying is that I'm starting off with emergent spacetime having the characteristics of consciousness, and that consciousness is fundamental. And that's why you get the precision in the laws of physics. That's why the universe is so explainable with mathematics and everything. And I heard that, you know, the laws of physics are almost like just brute facts and everything. And so I didn't really find that a sufficient answer. And I would say that theism is the best explanation of reality, given that.
All right, Tim. Closing statement. 1 minute.
All right, cool. So yeah, no, this was really awesome conversation. Just love always getting kind of people's way of thinking about it. And I love thinking about the nature of reality and the foundations. So I think that it's always really, you know, exciting to talk about that. And yeah, you know, I pretty much, you know, just showed that compared the two theories and what they start with. And I tried to see, you know, using the theoretical virtues, if they have a cost or a gain in terms of, and theoretically, in terms of how they explain things. And what I've shown is that naturalism has construction problems in terms of the resources it can to produce these sets of facts that we see, and arbitrary limits, positing arbitrary limits to also explain the things that we see. And I think that a theory that has the resources to produce the sets of facts that are fundamental to reality and is non-limited, is to be theoretically more preferable. So yeah.
All right, Jared, you're up, bud.
Yeah, I think that throughout the debate or the conversation, both of you said at one point and granted naturalism to its full extent, and then you added your Skittles into our M&M bowls. And I'm saying I'm still grabbing for candy, and I haven't pulled out a Skittle yet. I don't think you convinced me that there's any Skittles in the M&M bowl. And I don't mean to take it down like all Barney style, but at some point, you know, like you can go deep down in the woods, and I think you're trying to argue that it's the simplest explanation, but I think the simpler explanation is the one that requires the least amount of hoops to jump through. And we have the least amount of hoops to jump through. And I'll just leave it at that. And I enjoy talking with you guys, by the way. So.
And you are in the woods, Jared. All right, Jordan, man, give us your final statement, bud.
Yeah. So I won't relitigate the whole thing. I think what Travis said there and is ending as a faulty analogy, saying that this is like this in one respect, therefore it's like it in all respects. But the audience will be the final judge on this. I have to say this is very reminiscent of my discussion with Swan Sana. This is what happens when you have an engineer talking to philosophers. But from this lowly engineer's perspective, as Jared said, both of our interlocutors at one point said, I grant naturalism. So cool, then we're done here. Like, if I can use a naturalistic framework to explain everything into the infinite future and the infinite past and everything in between, then I'm done. I have no requirement for anything further. Philosophers may want to justify their university positions by dithering about more than that, but as far as I'm concerned, boom, I'm just going to go play video games. Thanks for having me on. This is great.
Right on. Well, guys, again, thank each and every one of you for being here. It was stimulating, to say the least. And I just wanted to let everybody know that is watching that, the live stream did fail. I don't know if it's something that I did beforehand. I will be testing it. We will get there. I promise. We will be there one day. Even if I have to switch over to my main PC, we'll figure it out. But we got some exciting stuff coming up at PRA Raw with we're going to be critiquing one of our own, a video called what is it called? Matter of Faith.
A Matter of Faith. Yeah.
Yeah, we're actually going to be critiquing that movie, since we've been critiquing some atheists and stuff. So now we're going to critique one of our own.
We're gonna
Stick it to them.
No, we're going to stick it to these young earthers. So, anyways, David, you got anything to say before we close, man? You just want to wrap us up?
Oh, yeah. And nothing against young earthers. I mean, I have a lot of respect for young earth creationism, probably more, honestly, than just about anyone else in this conversation. So I don't hate young earth creationists, but this particular film, it's bad. There are good young earth creationists and there are bad young earth creationists. And the film we're going to be critiquing exemplifies everything bad about, how you should... Well, really, how you shouldn't argue for young earth creationism. And so that's why we're doing it, not just because we want to hate on the young earth creationists. But other than that, no, I think that's all we have coming up. And so, yeah, I appreciated the discussion, everyone. And so thank you so much for participating.